Good morning, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode here of On the FinSide with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Check out our merch store on the FinSide.threadless.com as well. I'm Brian Cat, NFL on Twitter. Paul is fanatic_pick. That's fanatic with a PH. The Dolphins play the San Francisco 49ers this week at San Francisco. Niners are a 9.5-point favorite in this game. And the big story of the 49ers season and really of the week is just the amount of injuries that the 49ers have, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. There is no Nick Bosa. There's no Dee Ford. There's no DeForest Buckner from last year. No Solomon Thomas. At cornerback, things have gotten so bad now, Paul, that Ken Webster, who the Dolphins cut earlier this year, might be starting opposite Jason Verrett. And it's also possible they call up Jamar Taylor to be their nickelback.
Yeah, Miami's got to exploit their secondary in this one. It's given the devastation of injuries, given the injuries at the end. I know they get some push up the middle as far as their pass rush goes, but really that's where Miami's strength is on defense or on offense is the offensive line right now. So really you have to stop these guys getting to your quarterback, and you've got to exploit the Ken Websters of the world, the Jason Verretts with your Devontae Parkers. You just have to.
Yeah. And as far as the offensive line, bad news this week. Austin Jackson at left tackle goes down with an injury. He's going to be on injured reserve here. We expect him to be back in 3 weeks for him to be put back on the active roster. As we're recording this, it looks like Julian Davenport's going to be starting at left tackle. Jesse Davis will be starting at right tackle. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on it. I mean, I think it would be tremendously disappointing if you can't get Robert Hunt on the field at right tackle. I mean, this is the 39th pick in the draft. I understand that, he doesn't beat out Jesse Davis. I understand he's not playing guard because Solomon Kindley's played so well, but you have an opportunity to move Jesse Davis to left tackle now and insert Robert Hunt at right tackle. I think in a year like this, they'd be crazy not to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I look at the fact that when they need to go to a big set and they bring a tackle in to play at end and report eligible, you don't see Julian Davenport be that guy. We've seen Hunt come in on the left side of that line and do an admirable job. And Davenport did play better than I'm used to from him when he was in the game last week. But at the same time, man, we've got to see Hunt out there. We've got to see if, we end up with the Texans pick and it's number 2 next year, if it's worth investing a pick in Penei Sewell or not. We've got to see these type of things.
We do. And speaking of things we need to see this year, obviously the big topic and debate among Dolphins fans is Tua and when he's going to get on the field. What is your feeling heading into this game? Are you, if you were making the call, would Tua already be the starting quarterback here heading into week 5? I have my own opinions on that.
That's starting. No. Ready to come in at a moment's notice? Yes. And I know you feel if he gets inserted for even a couple of plays, he needs to remain the starter. I feel a little bit differently. I feel if you put him in the second half and see what happens, he needs to seize that. And that's regardless of Chan Gailey's completely uninspired red zone play calling. Maybe he makes something happen there that just doesn't involve watching a fat guy run.
I've made it clear that when you put a rookie quarterback in, that I think he needs to stay there. And I still feel that way. I will say it might be a little bit different when you look at the relationship of Tua and Fitzpatrick. It's not the same thing going on in Washington with Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen. By sitting Haskins, they're saying we're done with him at quarterback. I don't think that would be the case if Tua came in and he struggled as a rookie. I think he could very easily go in, the next game or 2 games later. But as a general rule of thumb, yeah, I prefer that once you put your franchise quarterback in, he stays in. And I still would like that for that to be the case here with Tua.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the eye test thing that I've talked about before. I think the situation is going to dictate it. And part of that situation for me still is, and Kat, after I say this, I'm gonna float a question your way that may piss off our listeners, it may not, but I've seen it floating around out there. I just need to see him get in there, and if he seizes the role, great. If not, maybe you use him as a relief pitcher for a little bit, and then get to the point of putting him in to start.
Got
But
it.
the question I'd ask you here, given the uninspired play calling that we've seen thus far from Chan Gailey, especially when they hit the red zone, would you consider Bill O'Brien as an offensive coordinator? Hell no on a head coach. Hell no on personnel decisions. But would you consider O'Brien as an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I would, and not specifically because I hate Chan Gailey right now. I mean, I'm not. I don't think it's anything special what the game that Gailey's called, but it's not something that I'm upset with. It's not something I point the finger at and say, okay, that's the reason the Dolphins didn't do well. I mean, I look at last game and the Dolphins had 5 drives in a row where they had field goals, but one ended on a penalty, one ended on a drop pass, one ended because the Seahawks were dropping players so far back and the Dolphins took an underneath route. I don't have a big problem with Chan Gailey right now. I'm not blown away, but I don't have a huge problem with him right now. Bill O'Brien, look, I think he's a good coach. As an offensive coordinator, absolutely, I would bring him in because he does have that history in New England with Brian Flores too. The problem with Bill O'Brien was he wanted to be the head coach. He wanted to be the general manager. He wanted to be the offensive coordinator. He probably wanted to be the defensive coordinator. It's like, okay, why don't you focus on being terrible at one thing?
He was a cheerleading coach too.
He was a cheerleading coach. He was running the concession stand. You name it. So yeah, I definitely would be open to it, but I would be open to it after this year. They brought in Chan Gailey to work with Tua Tagovailoa. That's it.
Best comment ever goes to Don Israel in response to us with what playbook? I'm pretty sure he doesn't have one when he gets to the red zone. It's watching last week. It was almost like Chan Gailey went, "Oh shit, I didn't plan for us getting in the red zone. I got nothing." And run, fat guy, run.
I was more disappointed with like for example in that 3rd and 3 at the end where they hand the ball off to Myles Gaskin and okay, you got a negative or a 1-yard loss, and now after 17 plays we're going to kick the field goal instead of go for it and try to win the game. That disappointed me. But to me that's more of a Brian Flores call than a Chan Gailey call. So I've got a little bit of a problem with that from Brian Flores. So look, I'm not blown away with Gailey, but I do like that he has used some wide receivers in motion a little more, some running backs in the passing game. I don't blame a whole heck of a lot on him at this point. And I'll say this too. When you look at the Dolphins offense, I was watching the All-22. Mike Gesicki was open and he was schemed open last week. And Ryan Fitzpatrick did not take those shots. I mean, when I see Mike Gesicki running open at least 3 times, 20, 30 yards down the field, and the quarterback isn't throwing the ball there, I don't point over to the sideline and say, what play did you call?
Well, so, God, you just made about 3 points I want to make from that.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Like they're all from the same statement. It's, for starters, I go back to the Chandler Cox conversion last week. Very easy to point out. This is only freaking catch in 2-3 years
ever.
So I go back to that, and if you look at the right camera angle on the All-22, you'll see Mike Gesicki before Chandler Cox flashes open, as Chandler Cox flashes open, and after Chandler Cox flashes open, standing 15 yards directly behind him by himself. Like nobody near him. And it's nice that they got the 1-yard first down, but that was a touchdown. With Gesicki's speed and agility, that was a touchdown. And guess what? Miami scores a touchdown they probably were in position to win that game. And instead of kicking 27 field goals or whatever the hell it was last week.
Yeah. And
Now, the other point I want to make real quick too is if you don't think the problem's Chan Gailey and your quarterback is missing wide open receivers running around 10 yards away that are going to put you in position to win, at that point, that is egregious enough for me that I change my vote on the Tua thing. And if it's happening as often as it sounds like, I would put Fitzpatrick's ass on the bench and put Tua in, not based on when Tua is ready, but based on when this team is ready for Tua. And in this scenario, if we've got receivers running open and he's hitting 1 yard freaking outs, that's all I need to hear. He goes back to being one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league in Ryan Fitzpatrick.
yeah, and I also think too, we can't have so much recency bias as well. I mean, because we weren't talking about the Dolphins' inability to get into the end zone in week 2 or week 3. They put up 28 points against the Bills. They put up 31 against the Jaguars. Nobody was saying that they had an inability to get into the end zone. But the Seahawks game, the last game, again, from 10 minutes into the game till about 5 minutes into the game till about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So that span of about 45 minutes, the Dolphins had 5 drives, 9 plays, 54 yards, field goal, 8 plays, 64 yards, field goal, 10 plays, 48 yards, field goal, 10 plays, 55 yards, field goal, 17 plays, 73 yards, field goal. They were way too conservative when they got down the field, but I attribute that more to Ryan Fitzpatrick as opposed to Chan Gailey. But my point is this upcoming week against San Francisco, if the Dolphins are getting into the end zone again, I don't think we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
So the question is whether or not it's a one game thing. That's why I was leaning toward Fitzpatrick playing again, because as we sit here at 1-3, Paul, if the Dolphins are 2-3 heading into week 6, you play a very manageable game at Denver, where again half their team's out. And the schedule starts to lighten up. I've always said that you need to be at least 2-3 after these very tough first 5 games.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. This is going to be, I think San Francisco is a tougher team than Seattle right now, because San Francisco has a pretty good defense overall, despite the injuries. They do have their holes, but Seattle's defense is just absolute hot garbage. And other than their linebacker core. But I just need to see Miami play to their strengths, and they could do well against this team, especially given the injuries they have. Now, the other side of the ball I want to talk about real quick, it's San Francisco has allowed, I think it's something like on 28% of dropbacks, they've allowed their quarterback to get hit. And hopefully we see Jason Strobridge in there this week. Hopefully we see Zach Sealer get a little more time. Van Ginkel coming off the edge, and Agba builds off of what we saw last week. Because if you can start hitting him, I don't care that Garoppolo's in. He'll go right back out again, and suddenly you're facing off against C.J. Beathard.
Yeah. I don't think we'll see Strobridge again. I mean, I think something's going on with him. It might just be he's a rookie. I don't know, but I'm like you. I'm very surprised he's not active, especially with what we heard back in August. As far as the Dolphins pass rush that you talked about, yeah, we had a guest from the Better Rivals podcast, 49ers podcast. Be sure to check that out too. He had a great breakdown, and he said Mike McGlinchey has been struggling a little bit this year, and not those exact words, but that's what he alluded to. And he's been getting beat pretty often. And Emmanuel Agba, I've told people about him from the beginning here, is he's got some upside, and he's starting to show that those pass rush skills. That's going to be a huge part of this, because the 49ers offense is very much an offense, much more than others, that doesn't necessarily rely on talent. They rely on being in rhythm with one another. They're very detail oriented, but when you can create that pass rush and destroy those details, that's when you're going to have a little bit more success on defense.
Yeah, and the one thing that I think is nice with this is the 49ers don't rely so heavily on the deep ball. They rely on a lot of short passes, and their receivers, taking that ball with them. I mean, you watched that Brandon Ayuk touchdown last week. That was one of the most impressive plays I've seen all year long. I mean, he's a guy I know we both liked in the draft, and he just looked electric. And you watch George Kittle play. He catches the ball, runs over three people, and around four more. It's you really, really have to contain their receivers, but luckily they don't really go over the top, and that's where Miami has struggled at times the past year and a half. It is over the top and blown coverages. We see it far too often, especially with Jamal, Wilts, Perry, Medea, whatever on the field. And really, that's what is going to help Miami is the fact that they don't throw a lot of deep passes. And so they can keep that coverage up in the box with their physical corners. Now that we got Byron Jones coming back, we'll see Benogany probably relegated back into a nickel role. And really, I can't knock Bobby McCain because he has been better deep. He's getting roasted for past performances.
McCain is very hit and miss. I've said in the last game, he was my player of the game because I thought things were really starting to snowball in that Seahawks game. The Seahawks, the interception by Fitzpatrick, then the 37-yard completion to Metcalf, touchdown. Seahawks get the ball back, and they're driving right down the field again. McCain has a near sack that ruins a play, and then he punches the ball out from DK Metcalf on a 20-yard catch that would have put the Seahawks in field goal range again. So kudos to him on that. I still say he struggles to get to a spot and make up ground, and that's so important for a free safety. But he does the best he can. I mean, he is who he is. But great observation there, too, on the 49ers don't go over the top a lot. They don't. I mean, they rely a lot from their wide receivers on end arounds and catching the ball, breaking tackles short, and then taking it. I think that does play into the Dolphins' strengths there. And they are going to get – sounds like Byron Jones back in this game, and that's going to be huge because Byron Jones and Xavier Howard are going to go up against Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in this game with a little bit of Kendrick Bourne in there and a few other players. But this is a game now at 1-3. The Dolphins this is why you pay $30 million to these cornerbacks so that they can win this matchup and the Dolphins can play from back to front on their defense.
Yeah, and I want to see Eric Rowe all over George Kittle with help in this game. It's because the other factor we haven't really talked about yet are Jerick McKinnon and Raheem Mostert coming out of the backfield. I mean, I know they're always a threat in the running game, but coming out of the backfield, catching passes, lining up wide. You look at some of Miami's coverages last week, and when the Seahawks split a running back out in Carson, you had linebackers covering them, and that's not fully going to work unless, it's not going to work with these guys. They're too talented. You need to help them out, and that's what scares me is coverage from our linebackers and our safeties being able to get up in time to help out in that short passing game.
What scares me about the 49ers offense, and I was just doing some quick calculations here, Jerick McKinnon and Raheem Mostert on 57 carries this year are averaging exactly 6 yards a carry. And if you're talking about this Dolphins run defense here that hasn't been great this year, they've tightened up at points. Overall, they're allowing 4.5 yards a carry to opposing running backs. If it's a situation where the 49ers are in 2nd and 2, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 1 all game, that's where the Dolphins defense is going to be in a lot of big trouble because, and I really point the finger in this game at the Dolphins interior line. Zach Sealer should start over should start for an injured Shaq Lawson, which might actually be better for run defense in there. So you've got, but I point the finger at Davin Godchaux and Christian Wilkins, who I was not impressed with either of their game against Seattle. So if you can hold the ground inside and you can make it 2nd and 10 instead of 2nd and 3, it's going to make a major difference in the rest of the downs.
Yeah, and really against the team like the 49ers with that two-headed monster at running back, what I want to see above and beyond with our defensive tackles in this is I want to see them get their hands into the guy, stand his ass up looking, not giving a running lane. If you're going to chuck your guy, fill the hole to your left with him, and you fill that hole to your right. That's it. Simple as that. And they can't run on you. Let your ends be responsible for the pass rush. Just stand up your guy and drive him backwards and plug up running lanes. That's it.
I hate to keep going back to this well, but somebody who was really good at doing that was Raekwon McMillan. And Landon Roberts to me is terrible. And Jerome Baker can make plays, but you can certainly run at him. And that's got to change. And I'm not sure how it's going to this year, but they've got to add some beef and a little bit more teeth in that run defense if that's going to work. And this is a game where it could really work against them. So, but on the offensive side of the ball as well, I do see the Dolphins being able to move the ball. I think that the 49ers defense is better than the Seahawks, even with all the injuries, because you look at the 49ers this year, they're allowing opposing quarterbacks to have a quarterback rating of 76.1. That's not all that great. And yards per carry for opposing running backs, 3.17 from the Niners defense. So yes, they have injuries, but they've shown the ability here to play above their talent level. I mean, they're a very well coached team.
Yeah, the Niners are weird, and I apologize. I don't have the exact number right in front of me. Their run defense is good, but it's also susceptible to the home run, if that makes any type of sense. Like it's they're either going to stuff you at the line of scrimmage or let you race 20 yards downfield. So if Gaskins and Breda can get to that second level in space, I think they could do very well in this one. If they can't get to that second level in space, I think they get shut down pretty much at the line. It's feast or famine. And really, I hate to say it, if Batman's going to be back there at quarterback, he needs to make some frustrating plays with his legs that we've seen, because that is going to put the defense in a weird position. And he's an odd quarterback to adjust to when he does get his legs in the game.
Yeah, he sure does. And I mean, he's this year, Ryan Fitzpatrick has taken off with the ball a lot. I mean, he 21 carries this year in 4 games, so he's using his legs 5-6 times a game. And I hope that continues. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns too. That's a major part of the game. I mean, there were times it was frustrating to watch in that Seahawks game, and really several times in the first 3 games too. I mean, where Ryan Fitzpatrick was taking the offense kicking and screaming to first downs on 3rd and long repeatedly. So he does have that part, but he's also thrown 5 interceptions this year, and man, it probably should be 10. In the last game again, I mean, last game against the Seahawks, I mean, his 2 interceptions were putrid, and there were at least in the first half, at least 3 dropped interceptions too. So it's
how many times did he hit a linebacker in the numbers or face mask?
Yeah, Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright were all over the field.
Dude, Wright owned him. Wright owned him like you had a Fitzpatrick jersey. That's how bad it was.
Man, and that's the thing with the Tua Fitzpatrick conversation. It's like, given what we've talked about, you look at Tua and say, what are you waiting for? And, Brian Flores said this week very simply that he didn't think Tua was ready yet. That's pretty disappointing to hear, because you don't draft a 6'1" quarterback out of Alabama and then say, hey, he's got to sit for a year. I know you got the hip and everything, but.
And that's the weird thing. He said he doesn't feel like he's ready yet, but it all seemed like existential reasons. And it sounded like injury concern. And you don't keep 2 quarterbacks on. I love Flores. He seems like a straight shooter, but that answer reeked of BS.
Hmm.
It completely reeked of BS because you don't just keep two quarterbacks if you're worried about Tua's hip. And a big part of it sounded like he's worried about Tua's hip coming off that injury. It's in that scenario, you know, you don't let Josh Rosen leave or Jake Rudock is on your roster for game days. It's you something reeks and smells with that. And maybe he's got a valid answer he doesn't want to disclose. Maybe he's got a valid one, like whatever the Strobridge reason is that he's not playing Tua. I don't know. But at the same time, don't feed us an obvious line of BS.
See, I don't know, because I am a very, very big proponent on lying to the media, and going the opposite way.
Well, lie better.
I mean,
lie better.
Like, okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I on that. I mean, too, because yeah, that's a good observation too. Is Jake Rudock was cut this week, so you've got a third quarterback on your practice squad who's Reed Stinnett, and I'll tell you, I need to do some work on him. I don't know a damn thing about him. I got to figure that out. But you're not promoting him to be your backup quarterback in the game. I mean,
Reed Stinnett for starter. You heard it here first.
Gosh.
I'm not serious.
I know. But yeah, so we'll see. I mean, one thing they've got working for him too is that, again, the offensive line is a lot better than we thought this year.
A lot better than you thought.
A lot better.
You know how much I talk these meat monsters up from day one after the draft.
It's not hard to improve from the bottom. So it's
just like, how hard I talked up Solomon Kinley, even above Robert Hunt in this offseason. So there's not often I'm gonna pat myself on the back, but this is one of them. I believed in this offensive line, even if it shaped up slightly different than I was expecting.
I thought Kinley would eat himself out of the league in the first month.
Instead, he's eating defensive lines.
That's correct. Yeah. So and that's going to be huge too. And to get back to, I've taken us way off the path here as far as, but when you look at this season, it is so important to know what you have with Tua and with Robert Hunt, because if it's a situation, and I don't even want to go down this road right now, but it needs to be said, is you're in a situation where the Texans hand you the number one pick in the NFL draft. It's going to be one of the most historically controversial decisions in NFL history as far as the draft, because you draft Tua fifth overall, and he would have gone higher if he hadn't gotten hurt. But now you got Trevor Lawrence, supposed to go number one too. You could ideally, I would want a king's ransom and to stay with Tua, but that could be an interesting decision for another day.
Yeah, no, and I'll continue this little off the rails discussion here for our San Francisco game preview, but it does swing back around to it. And Trevor Lawrence and the Houston Texans first round pick, and David Fields even, and the Houston Texans first round pick, depending on where it's at, because God, it's going to be tough prying the Jets out of that number one spot.
Oh, stop it! You say Ohio State's quarterback.
What?
Were you you're the yes. Second guy? Okay, Justin Fields. Got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, Justin Fields. My bad. I was more on the Trevor Lawrence kick with that.
Go for it.
But anyway, so if you haven't played Tua this year, and you've got a top 3 draft pick, and you've got concerns about Tua's hip, you are in a cluster of a situation that you put yourself in, because you can't necessarily pass on those guys, but you can't necessarily draft them either, because you did draft supposedly your franchise guy the year before that you haven't actually seen play yet. And that would be the point where I suddenly turn my head and look at this front office and go, dude, I thought y'all knew what you were doing. I really, truly did.
Yeah. And that's where I am good with Ryan Fitzpatrick starting this game, because like I said, if the Dolphins go in there, move the ball well, and do get into the end zone and do come away with a win, I think the 9.5 point spread is insane. I don't care what happens in this game. I think that's nuts to go from 3 point favorites to 9.5 when Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. I know he's the quarterback and everything, but he's a top 20 quarterback at best.
Well, And
I'll come back to eat those words, I'm sure. But I mean, look, 9.5 is too much. I mean, if the Dolphins lost this game by 10 points, I'd be bitterly disappointed, and I'd be really deflated at a 1-4 team who can't beat a 49ers team when half their team is on the injured list.
well, and let's face it. I mean, I know I already said earlier about the 28% of dropbacks. Their quarterbacks are getting hit hard, and Jimmy Garoppolo's got a body made out of glass. Like I talk about Tua's injury concerns based on a handful of injuries. Holy hell, does Jimmy Garoppolo have an injury history for a guy who really hasn't played all that much overall throughout his career? I mean,
Yeah.
he is a brittle quarterback that is going to get pelted. I mean, I can't imagine Zach Sealer with a full head of steam hitting a glass quarterback going very well.
Yeah. The other part of that is Sealer actually has to get in the backfield and try to sack him.
Well, he gets on the field, he gets in the backfield. Let's face it. I mean, we've talked about this.
He's a good player. He's a good player against. He's stout. I like
Yeah.
Sealer a lot, and he's somebody I hope is around for a while. Not a great pass rusher. I don't even know why I said that. I'm taking him us off the path repeatedly here today.
That's okay. I'm enjoying this. If
But
you're
yeah,
listening, let us know if you're enjoying it.
2-3. If the Dolphins win this, pull off an upset here and go 2-3, it's huge because their games after that, it's when the schedule starts to lighten up. You play at Denver, the Rams and Chargers at home, at Arizona, the Jets twice, the Bengals, and you have a bye week in there too. So it's a lot more manageable here over the next 2 months. And you're not facing a red hot Josh Allen. You're not facing Russell Wilson, who may win MVP. You're not facing Cam Newton, who comes into week 1 healthy and pissed off. You're going up against Jimmy Garoppolo. You're going up against possibly Drew Lock, Sam Darnold twice if he's healthy, a rookie Joe Burrow, even though Burrow's played lights out. So yeah, you have an opportunity, but if you go to 1-4 here, you still play at Buffalo later in the year. You still play the Chiefs. Those are 2 losses, in my opinion. Now you have 6 losses on the year, and you're not going 9-0 the rest of the way. So if they don't win this game, I feel comfortable saying the playoffs are going to be. You can pretty much forget about them.
Well, let's face it. I mean, we talk about the schedule. I can't even bring myself after the past 2 weeks we've had to really talk about who's up next at this point, because this is a weird year, and it's my turn to take it off the rails a little bit. This is a weird year in that any given week you could have your game moved. It could be Sunday, it could be Monday, it could be Tuesday, it could be moved off of a Thursday or onto a Thursday. It could be suddenly it could be your bye week and you are shuttled ahead to play a game during your bye week or at future date TBD. So we've got to really, really, as much as we want to look at what the schedule says now, look at it on okay, here we are on Saturday. Miami's supposed to play the 49ers tomorrow. Let's see if we get there and go from there, because one pop positive in the next 28 hours and suddenly Miami's playing the 49ers potentially in the week between the Jets and the Jets.
Yeah, that would be terrible. And I'm glad that, knock on wood, that hasn't happened yet. But it is a concern. It is a growing concern. Looking at the schedule, it does start to lighten up a little bit after this. But this season in general, it's a weird season. But for the Dolphins, I mean, when they drafted Tua, with the hip injury, when they drafted a 20-year-old Austin Jackson, they drafted a 20-year-old Noah Igbenogany. I had the feeling that this is going to be another rebuilding type of year, and we should have all expected that a little bit. The key is getting these players better, drafting more players next year when you may have 2 top 10 picks, and continuing to build your roster from there.
Well, you may have 4 top 40 picks,
Mm-hmm.
which would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're continuing to build that. And if you get a solid number two cornerback in Noah Igbenogany, he's got a long way to go because he has egregiously let up some big plays. But we kind of expected that. Austin Jackson, he'll be back in 3 weeks, and he's been a lot better than I thought he would be. And the big thing is, get Robert Hunt on the field this week. I mean, we've got
Yes.
to know about him because I don't want to get into a situation next year, like, and you've alluded to this several times, is where the Dolphins are, I don't know, picking fifth or fourth with one of those picks, and Oregon offensive tackle Penny Sewell is on the board. And it's like, well, he's a great player, but we spent a second round pick last year with Robert Hunt. We don't know what we have with him yet, but we
I'll
think
tell you what.
we
I'll tell you what
invested a
we
lot.
don't have, Cat. We don't with him, and I like him. We don't have Penei Sewell,
That's true.
and it's Robert Hunt can kick into guard and battle it out with Eric Flowers at that point in time for the eventual heir apparent in the fact that Flowers is here on a 3-year deal. One of the things I looked at with our O line, just since we're talking about it, is the fact that the way the contracts are staggered, it's awesome. Like they're not all going to come up for renewal at the same time based on where they drafted these guys, based on the 5th-year options, based on when they drafted these guys. Their young core on the offensive line is really going to be staggered, other than I think Kinley and Hunt are going to be at the same time.
Yeah, that's well said. And if you can get Tua on the field this year and have him, hopefully he comes in and he's an all-pro quarterback from the beginning, but more realistically, he comes in and plays like a rookie and takes his bumps. 2021 is the year. 2021 and 2022 is your window there to make that jump, because now you've got these young players that are going to be in their second and third years when they're supposed to take that leap. The defense, yeah, it's going to be a little bit longer in the tooth, but Xavier Howard and Byron Jones will be 29 and 30. If you want to get them off the books after that or at that time, then you can. So there is a lot of flexibility on this roster. So we'll see what happens. The Houston Texans here, very interesting for this weekend too. Is I expect the Texans to win their first game and go to 1-4. They play the Jaguars at home. But if they don't, and they fired Bill O'Brien this week, and if they have an adjustment period with all the responsibilities he had, if they fall to 0-5, the week after that, they've got the Titans. The week after that, they've got the Packers. You could be talking about 0-7 for the Texans if they don't pull it out this week against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I'd really like the Texans to upset the Jets and take that number 1 overall pick. And just send the Jets back into Spiralville yet again. I mean, it's Adam Gase's job is safe there, so it's going to be an absolute catastrophe no matter where they pick. It's if I think any quarterback could succeed under Gase at this point as a rookie. I just Gase is a quarterback ruiner, which is awesome.
You don't think Adam Gase can get fired at the end of the year?
At this point, I almost don't.
No, I think it's a slam dunk. I'd be shocked if he's not fired by the end of the year. I don't see him coming back at all. Not a chance in hell if they go 2-14. That's not going to happen.
Gase is the most slippery MFer on the planet when it comes to that stuff. So long as he's got somebody gullible to buy his BS, and he will sell out his own mom to cover his own ass. And for whatever reason, the Johnson family just buys it. They just buy it, and they like McCagnon hired him, and he had him fired before the season started for being an idiot, supposedly. And you know what? The only bad decision that McCagnon made that offseason was signing Adam Gase.
Yeah, that's pretty good evidence there for him being a little weasel. And we grew tired of his ways here too. But Adam Gase, there's nobody left to blame. If you're at the end of Sam Darnold's third year and he's still playing like garbage, and they win 2 games, he's gone. He's not that big of a lawyer to where he's going to be able to talk his way back into that. And I'll say this too: if the Jets have only won 1 game or no games by the time that they're done with the Dolphins in those 2 games, I think he'll be gone too. It's his time is coming. There's no doubt about that. I would love for him to stay in New York, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I hope they sign him to one of those John Gruden 10-year, stake in the team type of deals at this point, because it's if there's one thing with the Dolphins struggling that makes me wake up and smile while I have my coffee every day. It's when I turn on the news or turn on NFL Network and I see that the Jets are an absolute and utter dumpster fire. And it's nice to be able to sit here as a Dolphins fan at this point, and it's the little victories at times. And one of
Yeah,
the biggest little victories I've got is, well, at least we're not the Jets.
well, the Dolphins are better than the Jets now, and the Jets don't have the draft capital coming up either that the Dolphins, they don't have anything the Dolphins have. And, the Dolphins are not exactly in a position where we should be bragging hysterically about them right now anyway. But, the Jets have far less. That's for sure. So anyway, Paul, we've talked about a lot here today. What is your prediction for the 49ers Dolphins game?
All right, so I want to see our listeners' predictions in the chat, but don't shoot me for this one. I think Miami needs desperately to go to 2-3, but I think they drop this one 23-21, and the Niners take it.
I had it 23-20, 49ers. So I still think the 9.5 points is ridiculous. I could very easily see Ryan Fitzpatrick rebounding here, and the Seahawks, or excuse me, the 49ers don't have the answers at cornerback. They've got Jason Verrett, who, you don't talk about brittle. This guy was drafted in the first round in the 2014 draft. This will be his 29th career game. And at cornerback, Ahkello Witherspoon looks like he's going to play. Not very good anyway. He's got a hamstring issue too. Who knows if he plays the whole game? And you may be looking at number 40, Jamar Taylor, for the 49ers. And something we haven't even talked about as well. In this game, you could be seeing the Dolphins' first and second round picks from the 2013 draft, Deion Jordan and Jamar Taylor, playing meaningful snaps in this game.
Oh, DJ.
I mean, Deion Jordan is probably playing better than he ever has in his career. Not saying much, but
well, he stopped smoking pot and leaving to go sit on an island somewhere. I mean, let's face it, that's an improvement already. I mean, he looked great at times when given the opportunity as a rookie, and then he just got fat, lazy, and stoned.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll see how that works out. Yeah, I could see this ending up being a Dolphins win in the same way that they beat the Jaguars, where hey, their secondary rises to the occasion, and after the Dolphins get a few touchdowns early, they're able to just lean on the 49ers, and the Niners aren't able to rely on those running backs that are getting 6 yards of carry. So, but I'm going to stay with that 23-20 prediction. Paul went with 23-21. What do we have from the chat there?
So actually, I this isn't from the chat. This is from me. I was just thinking about it. I think we should each make a bold prediction for this one, if you're down.
Okay.
I'm going to say for mine, I think Jerome Baker gets a defensive touchdown on a Jimmy G fumble after Jimmy G gets pasted by maybe Zach Sealer.
Okay. I'm going to say Isaiah Ford gets his first NFL touchdown.
Go for 2 touchdowns, man. Come on. Do it. Do it.
He's never scored before. He's drafted in 2017 draft. He's never scored. That's bold enough.
And then he gets a taste.
Okay, fine. Isaiah Ford, 17 touchdowns.
Yes, we're playing Madden. Perfect.
Let's go with we'll go with 1 touchdown there for Isaiah Ford. So thank you all for joining us here this morning for the 49ers Dolphins preview. We'll be sure to give our grades after the game in this same format. I've moved to the couch with a little bit new background. Sorry for the little creepy dark lighting here. I'm going to be working on that, but be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter. Paul is fanatic_pick. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the